The massive file crashed against the polished mahogany surface. Coffee erupted from the delicate porcelain cup. Dark liquid spread across classified documents that could have meant death if the Gestapo discovered them. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris stared through his office windows. The Landwehr Canal stretched below. 24 years had passed since Rosa Luxemburg's corpse was dumped in those same waters. Now he commanded German military intelligence. His hands shook as he gripped intelligence reports that would shatter everything. This cannot be accurate. The Americans must be manipulating our intelligence networks. They're feeding us fabricated information through compromised agents. But the data persisted. Every source confirmed the impossible. Ford Motor Company's massive Willow Run facility was manufacturing one complete four-engine B-24 Liberator bomber every 60 minutes. Each aircraft contained 1.5 million individual components. 450,000 rivets held together 30,000 separate parts. The finished product weighed 18 tons. This single assembly line operated faster than Germany could produce basic military trucks. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz maintained his rigid posture before the admiral's desk. He had verified these numbers 3 times. Different sources. Independent confirmation. The mathematics remained unchanged. What both officers couldn't comprehend was how this moment would trigger the most catastrophic intelligence breakdown in modern military history. German intelligence would systematically fail to understand American industrial might. They would refuse to believe accurate reports. They would be unable to communicate the true scope of American manufacturing to Nazi leadership. This failure would doom the Third Reich through fundamental miscalculation of mathematical certainties. The intelligence collapse had begun much earlier. 2 full years before this March morning in 1943, General Karl Kohler of the Luftwaffe had presented Hermann Göring with detailed reports from Washington. Military attaché General Friedrich von Boetiker provided the data. American aircraft production was approaching 2,000 planes monthly by 1941. Göring's response was immediate laughter, genuine amusement. Americans could manufacture household appliances and personal grooming products. Military aircraft were beyond their capabilities. The Americans are attempting deception, Göring had informed Hitler at the Wolf's Lair. This was December 1941. Pearl Harbor was 4 days behind them. Their democratic system creates weakness. Their mixed population breeds inefficiency. Jewish influence ensures corruption. They cannot possibly achieve what they claim. By March 1943, German intelligence networks throughout the Americas reported something that destroyed every assumption of Nazi racial theory and economic doctrine. The reports originated from multiple sources: Mexican industrialists who sympathized with Germany, Spanish diplomatic personnel, Swedish businessmen conducting trade through Detroit, intercepted personal correspondence from American factory workers to relatives in neutral nations. Every source described the same impossible reality. Ford's single Willow Run plant was outproducing all of Germany's combined aircraft manufacturing facilities. Oberstleutnant Nikolaus Ritter headed the Abwehr's Aviation Intelligence Division. He had spent 3 weeks analyzing incoming data. His background made him uniquely qualified for this assessment. Before the war, he had lived in America for a full decade as a former Lufthansa pilot. His Manhattan apartment during the 1920s overlooked the Chrysler Building construction site. He had witnessed Americans erect the world's tallest structure in under 2 years. Herr Admiral, Ritter reported to Canaris, these production figures appear accurate. I believe them completely. If correct, Germany has already lost this war. The outcome now depends entirely on mathematics and time. The intelligence flowed through dangerous channels. Each route carried greater risks than the previous one. Georg Nikolaus operated the Abwehr's primary intelligence network from Mexico City. He had cultivated relationships among American businessmen who traveled freely between Detroit's factories and Mexico's oil fields. These men discussed industrial miracles casually during social gatherings. They had no awareness that German agents were recording their dinner conversations word for word. February 3, 1943, brought a crucial breakthrough. American oil executive Harold Morrison attended a reception hosted by the German-Mexican Commerce Association in Mexico City. Several tequilas loosened his tongue. Morrison began describing his recent guided tour of the Willow Run facility. Ford had arranged this tour for potential investors. The company wanted to demonstrate their capability to fulfill massive government contracts. "Gentlemen," Morrison declared to his audience. Wolfgang Blaum listened intently. The German agent posed as an Argentine leather merchant. Morrison continued unaware that every word was being memorized for transmission to Berlin. "What I witnessed defies all description. The assembly line extends over 1 mile in length. The building itself is so enormous that clouds actually form inside it. Sometimes it rains within the factory walls. 42,000 workers labor there. This includes thousands of women. Negro women are building the most complex machines ever created by human hands." Morrison produced a pencil and began sketching on his napkin. Each bomber contains 2 bomb bays. Each bay carries 4,000 pounds of ordnance. 4 engines power the aircraft. Each engine generates 1,200 horsepower. They manufacture these aircraft in sections. Ford calls these sub-assemblies. They converge like rivers flowing toward the sea. Wing sections arrive from one direction. Fuselages approach from another route. Tail assemblies come from a third pathway. They meet at precisely calculated points along the production line. Blum interrupted with feigned casual interest. "Surely such complexity creates frequent breakdowns and production delays." Morrison laughed heartily. Consolidated Aircraft initially mocked Ford. They claimed you cannot build airplanes like automobiles. But Ford broke each bomber down into 60,000 separate operations. Each individual worker performs identical tasks repeatedly. A woman who prepared breakfast for her children yesterday now installs hydraulic lines in tail sections. They train workers in days rather than months. The most detailed intelligence arrived through Francisco Franco's Spain. Colonel José Ungría served as Spanish military attaché in Washington. He maintained close relationships with American aircraft manufacturers while secretly providing intelligence to Germany. Spain received tungsten shipments crucial to their industry in exchange for this information. March 1943 brought Ungría to a reception at the Argentine embassy. There he encountered Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief and the architect behind Willow Run. Sorensen believed he was speaking with a representative from a neutral nation that might purchase aircraft after the war ended. He spoke freely about the plant's remarkable capabilities. "Colonel," Sorensen said. Ungría absorbed every word. Within 2 weeks, this conversation would reach Berlin. When I first visited Consolidated's San Diego plant in 1940, they were building B-24s outdoors in the sunshine. Each aircraft differed from the last. They required 180,000 man-hours per aircraft. I knew we could achieve far better results. Ungría pressed for additional details. He claimed professional interest as a military engineer. Sorensen felt proud of his achievements and obliged willingly. I spent one entire night in my San Diego hotel room sketching the complete production flow. We would build bombers exactly like we build cars. Not by having workers swarm over stationary aircraft, but by moving aircraft past stationary workers. Each worker would perform specific tasks repeatedly. Perfection would come through repetition. The Spaniard asked about workforce challenges created by such complexity. We built an apprentice school that trains 8,000 workers weekly, Sorensen replied proudly. Women comprise 40% of our workforce. They actually perform better at detailed work. Smaller hands fit into tight spaces. They show more patience for repetitive tasks. We have Negro workers operating sophisticated machinery. Boys of 16 manage supply logistics. Democracy means utilizing all available human resources. Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish channels provided German intelligence with consistent reports confirming Willow Run's production rates. Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg visited the plant during March 1943. His report stated that the plant operates with efficiency that defies European understanding. They employ 1,600 specialized machine tools. Many are designed for single operations only. The capital investment is staggering, perhaps $200 million for tooling alone. Japanese commander Toshikazu Omai sent coded messages to Tokyo. German intelligence intercepted these communications. This single factory produces more aircraft monthly than the entire Japanese aviation industry. April 1943 found German intelligence with comprehensive data from 17 independent sources. All confirmed the production rate. The numbers staggered comprehension. Willow Run alone was producing 650 B-24s monthly at peak capacity. Entire American B-24 production exceeded 1,400 monthly. Canaris authorized Operation Pastorius in desperation. He needed ground truth. Saboteurs would be inserted into the United States via submarine. George John Dash led one of two four-man teams. He had lived in America for 20 years before returning to Germany in 1939. His secret orders from Canaris were specific. Gather intelligence on aircraft production before conducting any sabotage operations. Early morning hours of June 13, 1942, brought Dash's team ashore at Amagansett, Long Island. U-202 had delivered them just after midnight. Within days, Dash felt tormented by his mission's implications and what he already knew about American capacity. He surrendered to the FBI voluntarily. During interrogation, Dash revealed something that stunned his American captors. Canaris himself told me that Berlin refuses to believe your production figures. They consider Willow Run pure propaganda. He wanted photographs, employee counts, shipping records, proof that would force Göring to accept reality. FBI Special Agent Charles Landman asked incredulously, "They don't believe we're producing a bomber every hour?" Dash laughed bitterly. "Agent Landman, I lived in your country. I've seen your automobile factories operating. I tried explaining to them that if Ford could produce a car every minute before the war, they could certainly produce a bomber every hour during it. They accused me of being defeatist." April 20th, 1943, was Hitler's 54th birthday. Canaris personally presented the intelligence to Göring at Carenhall. The Reichsmarshal's ostentatious hunting estate sat north of Berlin. This meeting would become legendary among German intelligence officers for Göring's complete rejection of reality. Canaris brought photographs, intercepted documents, reports from dozens of sources. He spread them across Göring's massive oak table like a dealer showing cards that would lose the game. "Herr Reichsmarschall," Canaris began carefully, "we have confirmation from 17 independent sources. The Ford Willow Run plant is producing one B-24 Liberator every hour at peak production. They have achieved this rate consistently since January. Göring weighed over 280 pounds by this point in the war. He picked up one photograph showing assembly lines stretching into the distance. "Canaris," Göring said with obvious contempt. "Do you take me for a fool? These are obviously wooden mock-ups, props for propaganda purposes. The Americans want us to believe they can build aircraft like sausages. This Willow Run plant probably produces 50 bombers monthly at most." Canaris pulled out another document, an intercepted manifest from the Pennsylvania Railroad showing aluminum shipments. "Herr Reichsmarschall, they're consuming 16 million pounds of aluminum monthly at this single plant. That exceeds our entire monthly production." Göring laughed harshly. "Then, where do they obtain this aluminum? From their Negro workers? From their women riveters? Canaris, you've been deceived by American propaganda." 1 week later, Canaris was summoned to the Wolf's Lair to brief Hitler personally. The meeting included Generals Jodl and Keitel, and Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels. Hitler was studying maps of the Eastern Front, where the Wehrmacht was preparing Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk. He listened impatiently as Canaris presented the intelligence. "Mein Führer," Canaris said, knowing he was risking his life. "If the Americans are producing 1,400 B-24s monthly, plus equal numbers of B-17s, plus their fighter aircraft, plus British production, the aerial bombardment of the Reich will soon exceed our defensive capabilities." Hitler's response was characteristic. "Admiral, the Americans are capable of mass production of simple goods, automobiles, refrigerators. But a bomber is not a car. It requires precision, skill, dedication. When it took us 6 years to prepare for war, they claim to have achieved this in 16 months. It's impossible." General Jodl studied Canaris's figures and began making calculations. "Even if we accept 1/4 of these figures as accurate—" "The figures are false," Hitler interrupted. "The Americans entered the war in December 1941. Building this miraculous factory and achieving this production in such time is impossible." Unknown to Nazi leadership, Canaris had obtained film footage of Willow Run in operation. American intelligence contacts in Switzerland had provided it. The film traveled via Spanish diplomatic pouches. Canaris and his deputy Hans Oster watched the footage in a locked room at Abwehr headquarters. The camera traveled along the entire mile-long assembly line. B-24s in every stage of construction moved past at steady pace. Workers of every description performed tasks with mechanical precision. Men, women, black, white. A clock visible in several shots confirmed the timing. "My God," Oster whispered. "It's actually true." Canaris lit the film with his cigarette lighter. He watched it burn completely. "We cannot show this to them. They would accuse us of creating fake footage or being traitors." November 1943 brought aerial photographs of Willow Run, taken by a Spanish diplomat. German intelligence photo analysts spent weeks studying these images. Their conclusions were definitive. Parking lots contained approximately 12,000 cars, indicating 3-shift operations. Completed B-24s were visible at the adjacent airfield. 47 aircraft sat ready for delivery. The assembly line was visible through skylights. Aircraft were spaced exactly as reported. Rail sidings showed dozens of freight cars delivering materials. Hauptmann Werner Sehn wrote the analysis. Photographic evidence confirms human intelligence. Production rate appears accurate. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment. Göring examined the photographs and dismissed them as clever American photographic manipulation, probably using scale models. Dr. Albert Speer, served as Hitler's armaments minister. He was the only Nazi leader with genuine understanding of industrial production. He secretly obtained the American intelligence. His diary entry for May 15, 1943, discovered after the war, reveals his despair. If the Willow Run figures are even half accurate, we face not defeat, but annihilation. They produce more aircraft in 1 month than we do in a year. But I cannot speak this truth. To do so would be my death warrant. Dr. Otto Ohlendorf headed SD Inland and possessed training as an economist. He analyzed American economic data. His report to Himmler in December 1943 was stark. The Ford Motor Company's peacetime production in 1941 was 1.1 million vehicles. They have converted this capacity to bomber production. At current rates, by June 1944, the Americans will have produced enough B-24s alone to drop our entire 1940 London bombing tonnage every single day. Christmas Eve 1943 brought Canaris intelligence showing American production projections for 1944. B-24 Liberators, 18,000. B-17 Flying Fortresses, 12,000. B-29 Super Fortresses, 1,000. Fighter aircraft, 40,000. Total, 86,000 aircraft. Hitler's response when presented these figures: the Americans claim they will produce more aircraft in 1944 than all nations have produced in all of history. It's absurd. February 1944 saw Canaris removed from his position. He was suspected of defeatism and treason. His replacement, Walter Schellenberg, was a Nazi loyalist who wouldn't dare contradict Hitler or Göring. But reality couldn't be ignored forever. February 20th, 1944 began Big Week. The American 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument. Over 1,000 heavy bombers targeted German aircraft factories. In 6 days, they dropped more bomb tonnage than the Luftwaffe had dropped on Britain during the entire Blitz. Luftwaffe fighter pilot Adolf Galland told Göring, "Herr Reichsmarschall, I've counted over 800 bombers in a single formation. These planes are real, and they're dropping real bombs." June 6, 1944, brought over 11,000 Allied aircraft over France. The Luftwaffe could muster fewer than 300 fighters in response. Field Marshal Hugo Sperle sent a desperate message to Berlin. "The enemy's aerial superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was correct. We were deceived not by the Americans, but by ourselves." April 1944 saw Willow Run achieve its peak production rate. That month, employees worked in 2 9-hour shifts, 6 days weekly. They produced 453 airplanes in 468 hours. This equaled 1 finished B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. The plant employed 42,331 workers. This included 11,000 women, representing 26% of the workforce. 3,800 African Americans comprised 9% of the workforce. 1,200 disabled workers made up 3% of the workforce. This demographic breakdown would have completely shattered Nazi racial ideology. The inferior races and weaker sex were outproducing the German master race by orders of magnitude. After the war, surviving German intelligence officers revealed the full scope of the failure. Walter Schellenberg testified at Nuremberg, "We knew the truth about American production by early 1943. Every professional intelligence officer understood the numbers were accurate. But to report this truth was to risk execution for defeatism." Hans Bernd Gisevius wrote in his memoirs, "The tragedy was not that we lacked intelligence about American production. We were drowning in it. The tragedy was that our leadership refused to believe it because it contradicted their racial ideology." German intelligence officers who tried to report the truth paid a heavy price. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris was executed April 9, 1945, at Flossenburg concentration camp. Hans Oster was executed April 9, 1945, at Flossenburg concentration camp. Alexis von Roena was executed October 1944 for involvement in the July 20th plot. Hans Bernd Gisevius escaped to Switzerland and survived the war. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey confirmed what German intelligence had reported. Willow Run produced 8,685 B-24s between 1942 and 1945. Peak production was 650 aircraft monthly. The hourly rate was sustained for months. Total cost per aircraft dropped from $238,000 to $137,000. Albert Speer, in post-war interrogation, was asked why Germany didn't believe the intelligence about American production. To accept that Ford could produce a bomber every hour was to accept that our entire worldview was wrong. That democracy wasn't weak, but strong. That racial mixing didn't create weakness, but strength. That women could do men's work. It would mean accepting that we had started a war we could never win. Who would tell Hitler that? Rose Monroe was the real-life inspiration for Rosie the Riveter. She operated a rivet gun on the B-24 production line. She and thousands of women like her had never worked in industry before Pearl Harbor. "We knew we were building something important," Monroe said in a 1984 interview. "Every rivet we drove was going to help end the war. We worked double shifts sometimes, sleeping in the parking lot between shifts. We had brothers, husbands, sweethearts flying these planes." The failure to believe intelligence about Willow Run had catastrophic consequences. Fighter production continued. Germany kept producing bombers until late 1944. Resource allocation failed. Resources were wasted on wonder weapons instead of practical defenses. Strategic planning collapsed. Operations were planned for facing hundreds of bombers, not thousands. Diplomatic failures emerged. Peace overtures were delayed due to not understanding certain defeat. German economists analyzing captured documents realized the true scale. Willow Run cost $200 million. German entire aircraft industry investment from 1933 to 1945 equaled $400 million equivalent. Willow Run floor space measured 3.5 million square feet. All German aircraft factories combined totaled 8 million square feet. Willow Run electrical consumption reached 2.5 million kilowatts monthly. The Americans had built a single factory, consuming more resources than entire German cities. The final accounting revealed everything by war's end. Total B-24s produced 18,188. Willow Run built 8,685. Total B-17s produced 12,731. Total American aircraft produced 1940 to 1945, 303,717. Total German aircraft produced 1940 to 1945, 94,700. The United States produced 3.2 times more aircraft than Germany, while fighting a two-ocean war. Historians call the German intelligence failure regarding American production one of the most consequential in military history. It wasn't a failure of collection. German agents gathered accurate, detailed intelligence. It was a failure of acceptance. Leadership refused to believe intelligence contradicting their worldview. Dr. Gerhard Weinberg concluded, German intelligence accurately assessed American production capacity by early 1943. Had this intelligence been believed and acted upon, Germany might have sought peace 2 years earlier, saving millions of lives. The story carries profound lessons. Cognitive bias means accurate intelligence can be rejected if it contradicts core beliefs. Ideological blindness allows political ideology to override mathematical reality. Systemic failure occurs when intelligence systems punish unwelcome truth while rewarding comfortable lies. Fatal miscalculation happens when underestimating opponents leads to catastrophic errors. At the 1985 dedication of the Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run, former Rosie the Riveter Rose Monroe met former Luftwaffe pilot Hans Rudel. Rudel asked, "How did you build so many so fast?" Monroe answered, "Honey, we just went to work every day and did our job. Nothing fancy. Just punch in, build bombers, punch out. Democracy isn't complicated. It's just free people doing their best." Rudel responded, "We were told democracy made you weak, that your diversity made you inefficient. We were told lies, and those lies killed millions." In the ruins of Berlin, May 1945, American intelligence officers discovered a final German intelligence report on Willow Run. It was dated April 20, 1945, Hitler's last birthday. Willow Run production confirmed. "We reported this truth 2 years ago. We were not believed. Germany dies not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of wisdom to believe intelligence that contradicts what we wish to be true." Let future generations learn. Reality does not bend to ideology. Mathematics does not yield to mythology. Truth ignored becomes tragedy. The report was never delivered. By then, Hitler was in his bunker. The 1,000-year Reich had days to live. Thousands of American bombers, many built at Willow Run, delivered the final argument German intelligence had tried to make 2 years earlier. The verdict of history is clear. German intelligence was excellent. German intelligence acceptance was catastrophic. In that failure to believe uncomfortable truths lies a warning for all nations. Reality doesn't care what you believe. Those who deny reality in favor of ideology will ultimately be destroyed by it. Willow Run built more than bombers. It built proof that democracy works, that diversity strengthens, that freedom produces. German spies counted them all. German leaders believed none. And that disbelief killed the Third Reich as surely as any bomb.